getting with the one and only Steve Santangelo, or Steven Santangelo of Matriarch Wealth Management. Steven, great to see you.
Great to be here, Ray.
You go by Steve or Steven?
Steven, usually.
Yeah, I didn't think you go by Steve. You're not really a Steve kind of guy.
Steve was my name in college, and then I transitioned to Steven in the professional world.
Okay, I appreciate that. Matriarch Wealth Management. Okay, so I get the sense that you invest in companies.
Yes, so we run holistic wealth management for our clients that are ultra high net worth investors, but a big value add is that we invest in private companies, specifically some CPG companies, as part of our kind of private equity allocation.
And what CPG brands are you currently invested in?
Right now we're invested in No Bull and Junkless,
Okay.
which are two of our family's brands, actually. So I think you know, but my uncle is Mike Rapoli, who was very involved in Glasso, Body Armor, and now he does Junkless and No Bull, two CPG brands.
Mike Rapoli. For folks who don't know the name, he's a pretty successful guy. One of the co-founders of Vitamin Water, Glasso, and one of the co-founders of Body Armor. So combined, those two companies sold for about $12 billion with a B, is that correct?
Yeah, $12 billion, and it's funny. So Mike makes a joke that I'm the best investor in the family, because when I was 8 years old, I made my first investment in Glasso, and when I was 16, I exited my first investment and paid for college. So I'm actually a better investor than he is.
I would say
according
so.
to him.
Yeah. Well, he's an entrepreneur. You're an investor. Yeah. Speaking of investment, when I think about entrepreneurs and the struggles that they have trying to raise money, I think a lot of it comes down to focus and business strategy. When you're advising entrepreneurs and folks in this room, founders who are saying, hey, Steven, how can I get investors to notice me? How can I raise capital? What are the things that come to mind first and foremost for you?
The biggest thing is we want to see the vision, right, and the passion behind the brand. It's nice to have a good brand and great to show sales and proof of concept, but unless you're passionate and kind of crazy about what you're doing, people on the other side of the bench are going to see that, right? And if we see someone that's laser focused, driven, motivated, we're more likely to take a chance on that folks company than if someone else is just kind of free, winging it, if you will.
Mike is known for being a tremendous worker. This guy works all the time. He is driven almost to the point.
You can call him a psychopath. It's okay.
He is obsessed. He is obsessed. But I wonder at what level. I mean, is there a fine line between hard work and being obsessed? I mean, how do investors evaluate founders in that regard?
I think from a mental standpoint, they're kind of one and the same. He lives, breathes, and sleeps the brands that he's a part of, right? And that's kind of passed on to me where, if we get a new client today, that's awesome. But tomorrow, it's like that person didn't exist, right? And we want to continue to grow the business and continue to stay laser focused. So for Mike, it's a perfect blend where he's just always been driven, motivated, and kind of the only person in the room, and that just kind of propels him.
So Matriarch Wealth Management, we didn't talk about at what stage you're looking at companies, at what stage of their development that you're starting to say, hey, we might want to be involved.
Yeah. I would say Series B is when it starts to get interesting, because what we find is that many founders, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room, you are so laser focused on your business. You don't know what happens when an LOI comes to you. You're not prepared for that for you and your family, right? Because you're so into your business. Our job is to make sure you're prepared for that LOI, because there's a lot of gifting strategies, a lot of things you can do pre-LOI that'll actually save you millions of dollars in taxes. And that's what we find people are not so ready for. And when you have that plan in place, you're going to be better off for it. Your family's going to be better off for it. And on the other side of the table, when we're looking to invest in you, we want to see that you're focused on the 360 view.
Just for folks who are not familiar with the term LOI.
Letter of intent. So someone's trying to buy your company.
And Series B level, you're talking about 10, 20 million in revenue?
10, 20 million is usually the sweet spot. But as a founder, we like to see that you own at least 20% of your business in an ideal world. Right, but that Series B, 10 to 20, is a good target area.
Just before we wrap up, there are folks in the room who are saying, hey, I want to get in touch with Steven. I want to be in touch with him and his team. When is the best time to reach out to Matriarch? When is the best time to begin a relationship with you guys?
Honestly, now, because at the end of the day...
Be careful when you say that. You're going to get swarmed after
this. Well, yeah,
this.
but when you're thinking about what's going to happen in the future of your business, it's probably an unknown, right? Someone can knock on your door tomorrow and offer you a check, right? Someone can want to acquire you tomorrow. And, we're okay talking to people in the very early stages of their life cycle because there's value in planning to be done now that might not be a benefit for you for 3 or 4 years. But at least you've done the work now and you're ready for that exit. So, there's no time as good as now.
Absolutely. Stephen, thank you so much for all of your support for this event. Thank you so much for all you do for the industry. For folks who want to get in touch with you, is there an email address? Because we are recording this and we are going to post it on Taste Radio. For folks who are not here, what's the best way to connect with you and your team?
Yeah, you can email me at Stephen, Stephen, so sometimes confused with Stefan down here in Miami, at matriarchwm.com. And you could also visit our website at www.matriarchwm.com.
Outstanding. Stephen, once again, thank you so much.
Thanks,
really appreciate it. Thank you. You can leave your microphone right there because we're going to bring up our next guest, and that man is known as the beverage whisperer. Come on up, Kenny. Ken Sadowsky, a legend in this industry. Not exactly a micropole. Yes, clap for the Kenny. Yes, there you go. There are some shared history, or there is some shared history between you and Micropoli.
I would say yes.
Yes, you were an early distributor, one of the earliest distributors of vitamin water.
Yes.
And
first.
by you, I mean your family's distribution company.
Correct.
Yeah. For folks who aren't really familiar with Ken Sadowsky, distributor, investor, general raconteur, tell us a bit about your background and work in the beverage industry.
I wish I could remember.
It's been that long?
No, look, thank you. Thanks for having me here. I started the non-alcoholic beverage division of a family business that started legally in 1933, maybe started in the 20s. Before that, in the alcoholic space, and now what we call beverage alcohol. And I've been a student of the game since New York Seltzer in the late 80s and became an early Snapple distributor, an early Red Bull distributor, Sobe, just had some really good brands. And I had good instincts, fortunately, about what brands were going to be next, and learned from Darius and Mike Rapoli how to
the co-founders of Vitamin Water.
Yes, how to back people. And I just liked those guys, and they asked me to join their board, and I invested in the company, and that was sort of my pivot point. And then I guess the other thing that's a big time drain is being the advisor in the US for Verlivest, the Belgian InBev family's diversification vehicle. And they have about 4.5 billion euros deployed around 28 portfolio companies around the world. And I led them to Vita Coco and Hint and Sambazon, and then also introduced them to Pop Chips. So not only am I the beverage advisor for them, but a little bit of food.
That's good to know for the folks in here because we have both food and beverage founders here in Miami. And I want to get into your angel investing in a moment. And you are an investor in Neau Water, which is one of our partners here for this event. And I want to get into how you evaluated that brand, how you evaluate early stage brands in general. But before that, thinking about the landscape of food and beverage and how much it's changed over the last 20, 25 years, I mean, it feels like it's become a lot more difficult for brands to be uber successful. How do you see the changing winds and how do you see them affecting really early stage brands, those that are 0 to 2 years in?
Well, I guess one answer is the sort of how the beverage business in particular is evolutionarily healthier, and how consumers define healthier has evolved over the 20 or 25 years. I mean, when I started with New York Seltzer, it was just Coca-Cola with no artificial flavors, colors, preservatives. And today, it's obviously a whole different level of how consumers define healthy. And one of the biggest, I guess, epiphanies for me is just the vilification of sugar that continues.
Well, the vilification of sugar has also come with the rise of non-nutritive sweeteners. And I know we've talked about this. You and I sat down for a conversation for Taste Radio last year. It's called Sips and Whispers, Talking Shop with Ken Sadowsky. Definitely check it out. But you're not a huge fan.
Wait, before.
Yeah?
You'll never get that hour of your life back. So just, listen to it, but don't blame me.
I don't know. We've gotten some good feedback on that one. That one, the most recent one, which is titled "Don't Go to Expo West." Asterisk. So anyway, watch that one. Read that. Yeah.
Non-nutritive
Exactly.
sweeteners.
There you go. So non-nutritive sweeteners. Just how do you evaluate these new sweeteners that keep coming to market and how they're deployed in beverages?
Well, I think it's fascinating. One of the things that I really like is the evolution of stevia, because when stevia first started, it's supposed to be the end of that steviol leaf, and that is sweet. But as companies got greedy, the ingredient companies, they started using the whole leaf, and that's what added to the bitter component of the stevia aftertaste, that lingering bitter. Now they're using different letters to connote the evolution back to just using the end of the sweetness. So Reb M is what they're up to now, and that's a much better sweetener than Reb A for beverages. Beverages are typically getting cooked. So like some of the other beverages that I like are trying to use allulose. Allulose doesn't stand up to ultra hot temperature pasteurization, for example. So those are the nuances that there's still a need for the best non-nutritive sweetener.
As an advisor and as an investor yourself, how much do you think about ingredients versus positioning versus trend when you're evaluating a potential, making a potential investment?
Right, they're all factors, right? Excuse me. They're all factors, and then it really just depends on a couple of other components, like sometimes it's timing, sometimes it's I'm backing this entrepreneur, sometimes it's, this is just the right product at the right time, in the right package, at the right price. I get asked all the time, what are the 5 things I need to do right? And there are sort of scientific things that one can do right, but there's also a little bit of pixie dust for luck sprinkled on top. So if there were a manual about this, someone smarter than me and, believe it or not, older than me would have written this book already.
Well, I think the book has been written. It's just that there's different versions of that book that keep coming out. It's like when there's a new edition, you see it on the front cover or the inside flap, and it says, okay, well, this is the 8th edition of this book. You've, again, invested in a lot of brands, and you've had a pretty good track record of picking winners. And in Neau Water, which I'd love to talk about exactly what it is and what makes it different, but what did you see in this brand that really got you out of your seat?
Well, I look at it as sort of the science waters came out, thankfully, with Darius and Mike Rapoli as Smart Water, and it was also the base of Vitamin Water and all the other Glasso Energy brands products. And then I was an advisor to Essentia Water, which I saw as Smart Water 2.0, and I think this has the opportunity to be Smart Water 3.0.
So almost like
step up.
Almost the way that coffee went from first wave, second wave, third wave. You're seeing the same thing in water.
Yeah, technology has lent itself to so many different segments of the beverage category, and this one, I believe that when this science works, it's going to be so scalable that it could be helpful in growing agricultural products. Like it can have use for plants to grow more effectively in this warming environment.
So it's not just the brand that you're investing in, it's the technology behind it, the proprietary technology that Neau Water owns.
Right.
That is an important part of a brand's ability to differentiate and stand out from other companies. But it's incumbent upon the founder to lead and lead well. What did you see in the founders of Neau Water that made you believe that this could be a successful brand?
There's good chemistry there. I hate to use that sort of double entendre because there is some science chemistry involved with this. But also, this could be seen as an asset or a liability. When I met them, they were in Houston, and they were enough psyched that I wanted to get involved that they moved to Miami. So maybe they need their head examined.
I don't know. Miami's a pretty nice town. And given that the food and beverage community that I'm seeing out here is pretty, how many founders are here? If you can raise your hands, how many founders are here? Quite a few. Well, look at that. Geez, wow. I'm really excited for. I had no idea that the Southeast, and particularly South Florida, was as active as it is in emerging food and beverage concepts.
How long have I been telling you to come to Miami for?
Oh, I don't know. Maybe me 2 years. John Craven 15, 20 at least. So, we got a couple minutes left, Ken, and I wanted to go back to Neau Water one more time, which is, you hear new pitches all the time. You invested in a brand called Parch, which is a brand of non-alcoholic cocktails. Was that last year or the year prior?
One or the other.
Okay.
Time flies.
When I think about new opportunities and I think about brands that are sort of attaching themselves to an emerging trend, does that give you pause, or is it something where, again, there's a specific part of the brand that overwhelms the potential for that trend to disappear or that fad to disappear?
Well, I mean, look, water, retail water, because we're sitting here with aluminum, has become the largest category in the U.S. after a lot of time. It's the number one category in the world. I believe in the water category. It's really healthy. And so that's sort of what compelled me to make a couple of bets in this genre or arena. And then as far as Parch goes, that one I'm really betting on. I was enamored with the liquid, and then I really like the founders. And that is, at the end of the day, I bet on the jockey over the horse.
Let's do some quick word association with the time we have left.
7.
7? Okay. Word association. And I know your feelings on this, so maybe everyone else doesn't. Gut-friendly sodas.
Puffery.
Puffery? What does that mean?
Not real.
Not real. Okay.
Exaggerating claims.
I want to ask you to expand on that, yeah. Ready-to-drink cocktails.
I like them.
When it comes to this next category, I'm going to throw you for a loop here. Wine.
I whine a lot. I don't know if you're aware of the most famous Jewish wine.
No.
Harold, I want to go to Miami.
Oh, jeez.
Henny Youngman, ladies and gentlemen.
There
Henny
you go.
Youngman.
Well, I see some fruit juice beverages here, or the founders of some fruit juice beverages here. Fruit juice.
Look, I mean, I think if I'm supposed to use a single word, I've already screwed up. But I think it just plays into the vilification of sugar. So how do you cull the calories out?
How do you cull the calories?
Or enhance the efficacy to the point where someone's going to want to tolerate those extra calories.
Okay. Last one. Functional shots.
Love them. I was an investor in Vive Organic. I love the immunity. I don't know about the myriad of other occasions for use, but I really believe in the immunity shots. Like whenever I get on a plane, whenever I get off a plane, it's where I'm going.
I asked Stephen this, and it's probably a good question to ask you. When is a good time to come and talk to you, Ken? When is a good time for someone to reach out to you?
When I'm awake, which is really rare.
Not true. Ken's always awake.
No, I mean, look, Verlivest has a criteria where their minimum check size is $50 million. So they've come up with a British, one of their offices called V3, Verlivest Ventures. Those are sort of the $1 to $10 million checks. So it's my responsibility to bring everything that I see that's viable to Verlivest first. Then I can work with a company or not work with a company after that. But in terms of, I guess it has to do with my personal bandwidth. I don't want to make promises I can't keep. I don't want to overcommit and underdeliver. And I think if you ask the 3 companies that I'm on the board of and 6 companies that I'm on the advisory board of and maybe any of the other 15 investments out there, that I try to be as available as possible. But there's, I'm getting close to the edge of what I can continue to commit to.
But you're still good for a word or two about advisement, and
Sure.
You'll give your opinion.
Absolutely.
Yes, outstanding.
Yep.
Ken, I can't thank you enough for all that you've done to support this event and the beverage industry as a whole. Thank you so much again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, from one legend to another, let's bring up Chris Hunter, who is very well known to this community. He is the co-founder of Four Loko and the co-founder of Koia. There he is, yes. Round of applause for Chris and Kenny. Good to see you. How are you? You have your microphone? How are you?
I'm good. Coming
Yeah.
straight from Mom's birthday dinner, and my son joined today, so.
Happy birthday, Mom. Great to see you over there. Well done. You're a big family guy. I'm so happy that you're always surrounding yourself with your family. And last time you and I chatted for the podcast, we did talk about how you, separate your time between work and family. And it's a really difficult balance when you're an entrepreneur. What's your best advice to folks in the audience?
Well, the best advice is it's never going to be perfect, and it's going to take some time to figure out. I pay a lot of attention to it, though, and my motto right now is like focus on the things that can't be replaced. And so my sons are 12, 10, and 7, and I'll never have a 12, 10, and 7-year-old again. And so I focus on making sure that I'm there for those really important moments, because let's face it, work can be all-consuming for all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've actually tried to adopt that in my life, is thinking about the moments as much as I am thinking about where I place my time. Because again, that moment, even that minute, that hour, that's not going to be there the next day, or that's not going to be there ever again. And I guess that's sort of true for the beverage industry and the CPG industry as a whole, is how do you pick your spots? How do you think about when you should pull the trigger, when you should pump the brakes? And you've had a great career. You've built $200 million businesses. I mean, actually, Four Loko is a much bigger brand at this point, but Koia is about $100 million in revenue at this point, in retail sales right now. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
But you've picked your spots in good places. You've made good decisions when they mattered. How do you think about timing? How do you advise people to think about timing?
Well, when I think about the industries that I got into and the timing of them, it was really just authentic to me. I was 25 years old when we started Four Loko. I was drinking vodka and Red Bull. It was very intuitive, right? I was the target market. When I started Koia, I was older. I had two children. My second son was dairy intolerant. My wife was a holistic nutritionalist, and so life looked very different at that moment. So there were a lot of opportunities after Four Loko to jump back into alcohol, but to me it just wasn't as interesting or as aligned with my lifestyle. So I think that's what I've used as a guiding light. Now, whether timing was right or not, I don't know, but I think when you jump into something, you have to go full go, and I was going to drive these companies to be successful no matter what, whether it was good timing or bad, was my mentality.
You built Four Loko for someone like yourself. Koia, I feel like skews to a slightly younger generation. It feels like it's a bit more of a millennial, and forgive me for calling you old in so many ways, which I'm not, but it feels like it skews to a younger consumer. How do you stay in touch with and have your finger on the pulse of what they're doing so that you can communicate and market to them as effectively as you need to?
Well, first of all, you just gave my son a bunch of ammo. He calls me old all the time.
Sorry.
So really, it's through our team, right? So a great example of that is TikTok. Like, I didn't use TikTok. I do now to like pay attention to what we're doing for the company. But our team brought up TikTok. They brought up these trends. They brought up the opportunity to capitalize on that platform. And so I think it's a bit of gut for the creation of the product and the brand, but really having the team that's kind of aligned with whatever it is. For marketing, it's the younger generation and the core consumer for Koia.
I would think you're as involved in marketing, perhaps even more involved on the innovation side of things. And a lot of time, innovation comes from your customers. Your customers are telling you what they want. They're saying, we want more protein. We want less sugar. We want bigger sizes, smaller sizes, what have you. How do you take the information that you're hearing from customers, from your consumers, and apply it or not apply it to your innovation pipeline?
Yeah, so for me, it has to pass multiple tests. One, I like to hear it from consumers or be able to spot the trend. If I hear one piece of feedback, though, it's not enough, right? We need to hear multiple pieces of feedback, or something needs to make sense to me personally or someone on our team personally to be like a second stage gate to consider. But I think we also have to be not afraid to make mistakes. I mean, we've put out multiple lines and products that got discontinued, and that's okay. I wouldn't call those failures because they served a purpose. They either proved that we weren't going to go into this category, or they gained us additional shelf space that we backfilled with a new item. So, I mean, a bit of gut, a bit of data. I mean, I think there's a trap in getting too wrapped up in data because it's a lagging indicator, right? So, and then, Ken's big on this, but store checks, right? We have to be in the store. You have to pay attention to what you're seeing working and what's not, because customers tell us all kinds of things. A great example of that. When we looked at the data, it said that sugar was out of favor, right? We all know that. Low protein smoothies were a miss or a need in the store. And that's what everybody told us. Buyers loved it. And then nobody bought it. It's a bit exaggerated, but it didn't work. And so the data guided us in the wrong direction, whereas there had to be a bit of gut and feel to it.
So what is the purpose of data? What do you use data most for? And because it's expensive. I mean, you talk about spins, IRI, what have you. Anything that you can't get organically, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And for folks in the audience right now, they're like, well, I don't have $10,000, $15,000 to spend on data. What's your advice in that regard?
So for me, data is really to prove things to other people, right? When buyers are first buying from us, they're buying on passion and belief in us, right? Whatever story we're telling. At some point, they want some data to back that up. And I'll give you an example. We were in the midst of a transition last year. We were pulling the smoothie line out of retail. There were some distribution gaps. Our numbers looked down. But I knew at the end of the tunnel, the velocities on our core items that we would backfill with that were higher, and therefore it would show essentially growth. But we had to get through that 8 months, right? So we had to use the data to tell that story to get people excited to give us additional facings and placements. They're not just going to, believe our self-fulfilling, story or self-interested story. So that's how we use it.
Yeah, and I think retail buyers love that data story when they can get it, but they also love when brands have been able to prove themselves out. What are basic prove-out points at this point? If you're an entrepreneur, you're a year or two in, and you've gotten into a handful of stores, does the number of stores, does the velocity, does the innovation pipeline, what have you seen matters most to retail buyers?
I think there's only one metric that matters in beverage and CPG in general, and it's velocity. I mean, we get trapped in expanded distribution, and it makes you feel good. You're going into 1,000 stores, but if you're not able to support it and get that velocity up, you're kicked out, and you may not get back in ever. If you do, it might be 5 years at best, right? So I think it's always about velocity, and I would take a region or a market and max that out in terms of velocity, and then extrapolate that story nationally over going national too fast and not be able to support it from a velocity story.
Those velocity stories can be great to tell if you're in a well-recognized chain. Does it matter as much? Let's say you're an independent chain. I heard someone talk about a six-store chain out here in Miami. But if it's not as well known as, say, a Whole Foods or a Sprouts, does that story resonate as much, though? I
mean, for me, everybody's going to discount your story no matter what, right? Whatever you show the buyer, their job is to sift through the bullshit of it, right? So I would just tell the best story with those six stores chain. I think it's still powerful, and you may not get national with Kroger based on that story, but you may get Publix based on that story. So it definitely matters, but it doesn't change the approach.
How about the approach that you guys have taken, which is to turn Koia into something that is both functional and lifestyle oriented? It feels like Koia has made that transition, made that evolution really seamlessly and beautifully. When did you evaluate the opportunity to go from a protein beverage to one that can fit into a wide variety of lifestyles, not just fitness or active consumers? It can fit into everybody's lifestyle.
Well, a bit of it was the trend of protein in general, right? So
yeah.
Years ago, protein used to mean muscle, and now protein is satiation. Obviously, muscle doesn't have the same potential negative connotation like a meathead in the gym, image. But we, from day one, set out to be lifestyle because I think it was a miss in protein. Most proteins were very functional. It was how much protein, how low sugar, and taste may come secondary, but people will chug it down because they want their protein, right? For us, it was actually a little bit different. It's we want to sneak in the health benefits. We want to lead with taste, and we want to build a lifestyle brand from day one. So it's a much broader opportunity.
So from the beginning, you were thinking about lifestyle.
Well, it also mattered the way we were marketing the brand, right? So if you're capitalizing or utilizing today's marketing mediums of social media, you almost have to highlight lifestyle to be effective, I think. I mean, there's only so many pictures you can put of the macros of your drink up on Instagram and people give a shit.
Yeah. I also feel like there's untapped opportunity in generations that aren't the ones we always talk about, Z and millennials and alpha right behind them. How much do you think about older generations, Gen Xers, baby boomers, and that opportunity to sell to those folks?
I mean, we think about everybody. We want protein to be in, and Koia to be in everybody's cooler, but you can't do everything all at once. And so we find a lot of bang for our buck marketing to the consumers we talked about. But I think we started by spending our dollar closest to the point of purchase. And so in store, you're going to capture a much broader audience, right? And so we definitely think about those consumers from a packaging standpoint. We don't want to alienate anybody, but on the platforms, like TikTok's clearly going to skew young because the users on that platform skew young. So there's just such an opportunity at retail. We have the number 1, 2, and 3 items in our set in Ralph's, and which is amazing. We're really excited about that. We got some data that 8% of the shoppers coming in Ralph's shop that section, and only 6% of the shoppers that shop that section buy Koia. We're number 1, 2, and 3 in the category. Mm-hmm. So it's such an opportunity to capture customers right in the store, and I think it's often overlooked as like a early stage move. Well, I think it's an evergreen tactic.
I think what you're talking about is building the brand at the store level, which is something I heard from Nicole Dawes. And Nicole Dawes is the founder of Late July Snacks and also the founder of Nixie Sparkling Water. And we had a good conversation. And she talked like that has been her focus and her strategy since day one, building the brand at the store level. But, what does that actually mean? I mean, for folks who hear that and say, okay, yeah, that makes sense, but how do I do it?
Often non-scalable tactics. I mean, in-store demos are really expensive. They're really expensive if you go do them yourself, right, or your team does them. But that is the biggest way to build, momentum, excitement, awareness for your brand. So doing things like that, doing TPRs. I've been shocked at
how many... TPR for folks who are not familiar with that term.
Oh yeah, okay, temporary price reductions.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I've been so shocked at how many brands I've talked to that they're like, we're in whatever retailer and we haven't figured out how to scale. And I'm like, what's your promo schedule? What's your TPR? And they're like, oh, we're not doing any. It's a huge miss because that yellow tag effect is going to get somebody to try it that hadn't before, and you're going to gain awareness that way. So, I mean, things like that.
In general pricing strategy, when I think about Koia, I think about it as an affordable product. It wasn't always necessarily the most affordable product out there. But, in this day and age when it's just so competitive, is there a way, can you take a hit on gross margin early on and say we're going to, make up for it in volume later on, or is that just not a good strategy at all?
I don't know. I feel like we got caught in the trap of growth at all costs, just raise more money. And that transition happened a few years ago where you see a lot of companies like in no man's land. They can't get profitable and they can't raise more money. So I feel like it is definitely a dangerous tactic. We did do it. We took our price from $4.99 on the shelf down to $3.99 with a plan for margin enhancement that took us 3 years to get to. And we spent and raised a lot of money because of that. So I don't know that there's a right or wrong way, but it definitely is a risky approach. I will say in retrospect, we ended up bringing our price right back up to where it was at the beginning.
Interesting.
But along the way, we may not have captured some of those conventional retailers. So I don't know what's right.
We're going to get back to networking in 1 second. You just came out with a book, and I have heard only great things about that. What's the name of the book, and what's it all about?
So the name of the book is Blackout Punch, An Entrepreneur's Journey from Chaos to Clarity, and it's really just my story. I didn't really want to do a how-to book. It didn't feel authentic. It's just kind of who I am, where I come from, things I've learned along the way, some of the successes, some of the setbacks.
Chris, I'm a big fan and have been for a long time. You're always generous, transparent, and just a good person to know and talk to. Thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you. All right, folks. Thank you all for listening to our interviews. I really appreciate it. TasteRadio.com is where you can listen to them once again. For now, we've got another 45 minutes of networking, eating, drinking. So please enjoy. And thank you once again to Matriarch Wealth Management, Neau Water and Lally Pack for presenting us here in Miami. Thank you once again. Appreciate it.